My guest sharing his journey of faith story this morning is ambulance service chaplain and children's author Tim Parsons. Tim has written 2 books inspired by a paramedic called Chris, who he worked with on his first shift as a chaplain. He's hoping to get the books into schools and libraries across the country so children can find out more about the important work of the ambulance service. Well, we'll hear about the books a bit later in the programme. But first, Tim told me how his faith helped him a number of years ago when he suffered a breakdown.
We moved to Gillingham in Kent after getting married to my wife Caroline, and I suddenly suffered a breakdown as a result of the death of a child in our previous church in Dartford, where I'd served as a youth worker, and that left me with PTSD. I suffered things such as agoraphobia, anxiety and depression.
And were you already a Christian at this point?
I was, yes. I had a deep faith, but at times going through this period I questioned a lot, where was God in all of this? How can this happen? The death of a child, and just general questioning of health and everything else. But actually I always had a sense that God was going to use that time, and I'm only in recent times been able to see this.
And you were also at that time, you were going through your own sort of physical issues, weren't you?
That's right. During that period I had a lot of intense stomach problems, and I was rushed into our local hospital, and they discovered on scans that I had Crohn's disease. And this was obviously a conclusion to some awful physical symptoms I was going through for a number of years. And it's taken a number of years to get on the right course of medication, but I'm now on some infusions every 8 weeks and doing well.
So where was your faith at this point? Because you said you asked some pretty difficult questions. Did you find ultimately that it was your faith that helped to sort of guide you through all these experiences?
Definitely. The most significant thing that happened to me a number of years ago, I was in a hospital ward in an actual room, and I was just reading the Bible and just studying, and in pain, but actually this immense peace came upon me, which to this day I can't describe. And I just felt somebody saying to me, I'm with you in this, you're going to get through this. And since that day things have always been not too bad, actually.
I always ask people this, and I'm always intrigued by different people's responses. How do you know that was God?
I had a sense in my own, I suppose, a gut reaction, but also through reading his Bible. Through reading the Bible, the verse that always comes back to me is in Jeremiah, "For plans I have for you, to prosper you and not to harm you," and that confirmed to my mind what I was hearing.
That's ambulance service chaplain and children's author Tim Parsons. We're going to hear a little bit more from Tim later in the programme. Telling me now, my guest sharing his journey of faith story this morning is an ambulance service chaplain and children's author by the name of Tim Parsons. If you were listening to the programme earlier, you'll have heard how Tim found that his Christian faith helped him through a breakdown which left him with PTSD and a diagnosis of Crohn's disease. Well, I asked him how he ended up writing children's books based on a paramedic he worked with on his first shift as a chaplain.
A number of years since, with my health, I was approached by the Baptist Union about a vacancy with South East Coast Ambulance Service to become a voluntary chaplain. My first shift was with a gentleman who's the lead paramedic, and his daughter has been suffering from cancer since a very young age. She's now 14 and still suffers. She'd written a book herself, and that inspired me to write one myself upon the ambulance service. And I got home from that shift, and our oldest son was watching Fireman Sam, and that got me thinking, wait a minute, there's nothing for the ambulance service. So I wrote down some experiences from jobs that I'd done, and it went from there. The books Paramedic Chris and Paramedic Chris, A Helping Hand, were born as a result of that.
So tell me a little bit about your role with the ambulance service as a chaplain. What would you be doing? Are you based back at base? Do you go out with the ambulance crews?
Yes, I'd go to the station to mix with the staff. and I go out third manning, which means I go out on shifts, long shifts with them and support them. It's been a very interesting experience because there's a lot of traumas they see, and often you find that things catch up with them after a while with ambulance staff, and I'm there as a listening ear just to help guide them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they must see some horrific things and must have to go through stuff that most of us would, fingers crossed, never ever have to witness.
Yes, I mean, I've witnessed some awful scenes myself, and I'm not doing the hours regularly as they do. It must cause immense problems, and I have seen it cause problems. I've particularly been supporting one member of staff who's really been through trouble, and just by listening, it's been able to help.
How do you deal with those kind of issues in a children's book? Because children, I mean, yes, you can't shy away from the facts, but presumably you have to kind of tone down some of what the crews go through.
Yes, I mean, my two books, the first one, Paramedic Chris, was based upon a hoax call, and it's more picturised, which I think makes a better thing. It is a very difficult thing to actually get something that you've been to as the scene into a child's format. And the second book I've written is on loneliness, because it's not all gore out there. The thing is, the second book was on loneliness, and the gentleman, his wife had died, and the paramedics were able to rebuild his life. And that was a true call that I'd been to, but I had to change the wording to suit children.
And the books have certainly had some fantastic reviews looking online. Is your hope to get these books to a wider audience? I mean, would you like them in schools across the country?
Absolutely. This week, in fact, I went to a local primary school to read the books, thinking I was reading it to just a handful of children. In fact, it was to the whole school. And my ultimate aim is to actually sell enough copies to possibly open a retreat centre one day, and this retreat centre, I'm hoping, will help reduce the workload upon the emergency services, particularly for mental health calls. We go to a number of mental health calls where we take patients into the hospital, but they get discharged with nowhere to go for support, particularly, then to be put back into hospital. So my vision would be to one day open a centre where people can go to 24/7 to have the support which is needed.
And where are you at with your faith now? Because you talked a little bit earlier about it sort of guiding you through your own illness and your breakdown. You're now out seeing some pretty horrific things on a daily basis. Do you still question why God would let these things happen to people?
I do question God. The only thing I can say is I'm a dad myself to two boys, young children. If one of them hurts themselves, they come to me and they cry and they come for comfort. I go to God for comfort and say, I don't understand what this is, why this has happened, but I'm coming to you for comfort, God.
Well, best of luck with the books and with your aim of getting them to a wider audience. Are they easy for people to find if they want to get hold of a copy?
Yes, Paramedic Chris books are available on Amazon and all major online retailers.
Fantastic. Well, great to talk to you. Thank you for sharing some of your journey with us on BBC Radio Sheffield, and keep up the good work with the ambulance service.
Thank you.